This is River here in beautiful Santa Fe today, coming to you almost live, I guess. And I just want to thank you for tuning in and joining us for this little online satsang. So the topic today was brought to me by my good friend Adrienne over at WTF Yoga, and she and I have this ongoing conversation about yoga therapy and yoga for more mental and emotional conditions. And she just wanted a little bit more on that. She just wanted me to kind of speak to that. So here's with minimal preparation, here's the quick and dirty on that. So I think the first thing to say on this topic is that for serious mental and emotional conditions that people have, the biologically based ones, serious grieving and trauma and abuse, there really is a place for them to go and see a psychotherapist or a professional, Western medical professional, and sometimes medication is the fastest way out, right? So it's important that we not, as yoga teachers and therapists, unless we're also trained in those therapies, it's important that we not try and provide a service that we're not qualified to provide, right? And really, in that context, our role is as supporting therapists to give yoga practices that support their overall wellness and healing and help them manage their mind, emotions, and symptoms, and not try and take on the role of healer. And also to encourage them to follow whatever advice makes the best sense to them. Unfortunately, in the yoga community, I see a lot of this, and it really pisses me off, actually. I see a lot of people being shamed and put down for going to Western medical providers for mental and emotional conditions. Shamed for going on medication, shamed for needing the support that provides. So I think one of the great services that we can do to our students is to empower them that, to keep the long-term goal in mind. The end goal is that you feel better and live a more rewarding life and more rewarding relationships, right? And feel more functional in your life. And whatever means are going to serve the best to get you to that end, you should employ. Use the tool that's going to get you where you want to go. And so to help them feel a little bit more at ease with their choices around caring for themselves and others, loved ones in their lives too, amid this culture of kind of the subculture, I'll say, of demonizing Western medicine, which is unfortunately rampant in the yoga community. So there's that piece. So, serious mental and emotional conditions, encourage them to see a professional with training in that field if you don't have that training. So, and now to get to the yoga piece. So Western medical training, there's like years worth of training that goes into this, right? And in yoga as well, there's quite a bit of material there, and it's well beyond what I can cover, obviously, in a short little video like this. So there's much more here, and maybe if you guys are interested, let me know, weigh in, and I can do a more extensive series on this topic because it's personally interesting to me. I think it's fascinating and highly relevant. So in terms of what I can offer you as quick and dirty tips on what my teacher Gary Kraftso calls the normal neurotic people, which is, with very few exceptions, basically everybody, right? So there's a lot of us out there, and really I think the tip to working with the normal neurotic people that you're going to see in your yoga teaching practice and also your yoga therapy practice is to keep the 10,000 foot view of the promise of yoga in mind. And the promise of yoga is that we do have the tools, if we choose to use them consciously, to come out of suffering. Whether that's the suffering of back pain or the suffering of not sleeping at night or the suffering of a dysfunctional relationship or the suffering of not being able to master handstand even though you want to, or whatever this suffering of mental instability and imbalance, the suffering of things like worry and anxiety and depression, the suffering of being unplugged from your highest. We can have suffering on all levels of, body, vitality, mind, personality, heart, emotion, spirit. All of those things we can have difficulty with. And so, really, as a yoga teacher or a yoga therapist, you want to hold that space of possibility, the space of possibility of coming out of the suffering. And oftentimes, especially if you're working one-on-one, the intimacy of one-on-one makes people a little more, I'll say, self-indulgent, not in any kind of a guilting way, but just they feel more comfortable to open up and let more of their story out to you when you're working one-on-one. So oftentimes what will happen is someone will have a kind of a story going on about what's going on in their world, and they'll want to enroll you in that story. They're going to want to enlist you as a supporter of that story. And this is normal. This is natural. This is our way of, keeping our personality construct safe and keeping our story about our lives safe and protected. So the stories of, my ex-husband, he treated me so badly and I'm such a victim, or, whatever the story is, they're going to want you to jump on board with that. And the problem is that doesn't help lift them out of suffering. Now you have two people, embroiled in this morass of suffering, instead of you maintaining a little bit of compassionate distance and helping them to see, that that's what it is, that it's a story. So from Yoga Sutra, we have the brilliant foundation of yoga practice, which is that, suffering comes from ignorance. It comes from misunderstanding. And it comes from misidentification. So identifying who we are with our thoughts, with our situation, with these stories, right? So confusing who we are, which is this pure, clear, loving, discriminative awareness, this whole field of potential. And we are confusing ourselves as this confused person, this angry person, this, this done wrong person, this limited person, this limited being. And so that's really the role as a yoga teacher or as a yoga therapist, is to help people to come out of their identification of themselves with whatever their mental or emotional situation is. So to help them come out of that. And the first step in this is in your practice. You teach them how to touch that space inside that's free of all of this upset and drama. That's what practice is there for. Whether it's asana or pranayama or chanting or meditation or service, whatever it is that you're doing, study, it's really, the purpose is to give people a real experience of touching the true deep nature of who they are. And so through practice, they experience that on the mat. And then the translation needs to happen of, okay, so I'm fine in my yoga class and I feel good, but then I go out in the street and someone pulls out in front of me and all of a sudden I'm plugged into my shit again. All of a sudden I'm angry, or I'm a victim, or I'm whatever I am. So after they have the experience of touching that inner peace in practice, then we have to roll up our sleeves. We have to get real and get practical with them about, okay, in real life, first of all, observe what situations are bringing this up. Second of all, what are the symptoms? How can you tell? What do you observe in your body and mind that lets you know that you've gone down this path, this dysfunctional, upset path? And then thirdly, what are the creative ways that we can come up with for you as a student to use to get you out of that moment, to help you remember, oh, I have a choice here. I have a choice. I could step back, disengage from this this, mental drama or this emotional upset. I can disengage, and then I can have the opportunity to make a different choice. At least they can disengage and step back and evaluate whether it's something that they're going to choose to get upset about or choose to get, angry about, or whatever it is, choose to perseverate on, or whether they're going to choose instead to just disengage and let that energy dissipate. Because it does. Oftentimes, the tendency that people have when they have issues in these areas is they want to think through it, right? It's like, oh, I'm just gonna keep thinking through it until I find the solution. It's like, well, that's the apparatus that got you there. So I don't know if necessarily using that and enrolling that that mind, especially when it's already triggered and upset, that's not going to get you where you need to go. Really, some kind of practice, some kind of way of unplugging from that mental and emotional groove is what's required. So there's a lot of detail, and Adrienne, if you or if anybody else has a particular student that you're working with and you have something that's coming up, I can give much more targeted and valuable practical help to you if I have a little more information about what you're actually dealing with. So this is what I can share at this point, again, as a summary. First of all, if they're having a history of real serious mental and emotional issues, you need to send them to someone who is qualified to deal with that, and then help as a supporting therapy. Second of all, if you're meeting with someone, you need to not plug into their story, not buy into whatever their drama is, even though you're going to remain compassionate to the person and to the suffering. It's real. The suffering is real, even though the story is maybe not, or has a grain of truth, but it doesn't need to be blown up into proportion and create suffering. So to have sympathy and compassion for their suffering without buying into their drama, then to teach them in practice to connect with that space where they're drama free inside, and then to help them observe in real life when they're getting triggered, observe how that feels in them so they learn to recognize it more and more quickly and catch it. And then finally, to help them strategize on simple ways that they can interrupt that triggering and interrupt that mental pattern. Because that's all it is. It's a deep, deep groove that's been worn from that, the car going down the same dirt road all the time. It's going to wear a groove. And so it's hard to get out of that groove. But it gets easier and easier. That's the good news. That's the good news. There is the possibility to come out of suffering. All right, guys, thank you so much.